All right, so we'll get started today on our backs on our mats, but let's bring the soles of the feet to the mat. So, or the ground. You don't have to be using a mat at all if you don't want. So, heads down, feet wide, just wider than hip width distance so that you can let the knees touch. So the knees are knocked together, feet are out wide, but still down the mat, arms down by the sides, close the eyes. And we're starting with just stillness and internal hip rotation. So those inner thighs are moving away from you. Chest is open because the shoulder blades are underneath you. Head's heavy. Back of the shoulders, upper back heavy. Back of the hips also heavy. And maybe you start to feel a release when we talk about certain areas of the body. Soles of the feet are there for support, knees touching, back of the arms on the ground, back of the hands on the ground, but fingers can curl up. You want the hands to be relaxed, palms facing up. Start to take a deeper breath in through the nose, back out through the mouth. 2 more like that. Deepest breath you've taken all day, in through the nose. Long exhale back out through the mouth. Let it go. Last one like that. Deep breath in, scoop in all the stuff you need to get out. And on the exhale, push it out of the mouth. This time, breathe in through the nose. Back out through the nose. Keep going on your own. So you're still with this long, deep breath in and out through the nose. You're feeling the breath go up and down the back of the throat. You can hear the sound of your breath, almost like you're fogging up a mirror in front of you, that ha sound. But it's not so loud that you're drying out the back of the throat. So you need to find that balance. And once you find your breath rhythm, or what we call in yoga, your ujjayi breath, you try to keep coming back to it. So at some point, your body's going to go back to breathing on its own. But the practice is coming back to this breath work. Staying with your practice. And keeping everything connected, mind, body, spirit. Letting everything else go. Heel toe the feet closer together. So now the knees will come apart, feet are hip width distance apart. Take the right leg, cross it up high over the left leg. So you're crossing up high up on the thighs, as high as you can go. And then maybe you're fine right here with the hips down on the mat, left foot down on the mat. Some of you might be comfortable bringing the legs in toward the chest, and maybe you grab on to that bottom knee. So as you grab onto that bottom knee, you might feel a nice hip opening. Some of us will feel it on the outer right hip, maybe even the glute, if that's tight. Maybe even that right hamstring. But I say maybe because we all use our bodies in different ways. We're all showing up in a different place. Sometimes you don't feel anything, and that's fine. Sometimes it's really sensitive, so you have to make adjustments. And if it's too much to bring that bottom knee in, then you just set the left foot down and your hip opening's there. So in yin, everything should have some ease to it. There shouldn't be a struggle, other than some of us do struggle to stay in the same spot in stillness for an extended period of time. If that's you, all the more reason to focus on your breath. That's what you're doing. So maybe you stay right here, and this is good. If you're feeling open enough to take it a little bit further for the last bit of this hold, you could spread the feet wide. You'll have to lift the upper body up. Maybe you grab the outer ankles. Maybe you grab the outer edges of the feet and then set the head back down. So the feet are flexed if you're going for a deeper hold. And sometimes our knees don't like this. So if that's you, then just forget about grabbing the ankles or the feet. It definitely is deeper than where we were before. So you want to make sure that everything feels okay. Hips are still going down toward the mat. So if you feel like the hips are trying to peel away from the ground, just keep pressing them down. And it doesn't need to be, if you do have the feet or the ankles, you're not trying to pull them as wide as apart as you can because it's yin. So it's just a gentle support with the hands and the feet together. And then that's it. Start to let go of the feet or the ankles. If you have them, hang on to the bottom knee just for a sec, and then set the left foot down onto the mat, right foot down onto the mat. Extend the legs out in front of you. Keep the feet a little wider than hip width distance, and then reach the arms overhead like you're just coming into a big long stretch, like you're waking up. And then clasp opposite elbows overhead. Right foot crosses over the left ankle. So you're just hooking the feet over toward the left, right foot on top of the left. Then the upper body is the only thing that moves here. So lift the upper body up and away from the mat, move the upper body over to the left a little bit. So you're making a banana shape with the body. Right foot on top of left foot is hooked. You can once you have the feet hooked, you can let the legs not do any work. You don't have to squeeze them together or anything. You can just let them relax. And then you're feeling some length on the whole right side of the body. Maybe the left too. It'd be great if you can feel it on both sides. If you feel like you've gone so far over with the upper body that you've taken away length on the left side of the torso, then you can back off a little bit. Both shoulder blades on the ground if you can, which might also mean you need to back out of the upper body if it's arced over too far. Head's definitely resting down. Eyes can be closed or softly open, but you don't want them all the way open. That starts to wake us up a little too much. We're trying to slow things down here so that any healing that needs to happen in the body starts to happen. We tap into the parasympathetic nervous system. And overall, we just become more comfortable with stillness, feeling at home in our bodies and in our minds. So remember which forearm's on top It's the one you always want to do. Bring the upper body back to center. Unhook the feet. So right foot comes out to the outer edge of the mat, and then arms just come down by the side. So just like Shavasana, you're lying down on your back. And then you'll start to walk the feet in, bending the knees. And this time you'll cross the left leg high up over the right leg. So you want to get that crossing high up on the thighs. Maybe you stay right here with the right foot down on the ground, or maybe you play with bringing the legs in closer and reaching for that bottom knee and starting to bring that in. So listen to the knees. If they're okay with this, then you're in a good spot. If they're not, then you just back up a little bit. Maybe you just stay with the right foot down on the ground. Head's resting, so you want to make sure it's not lifted. If it is, then you're not relaxed in the pose, and we're not going to get as much out of it. So find a place where you can rest the head, upper body. Hips are still even on the mat, so they're not lifting away from the mat, and you're not rocking over to one side. And if you want to take it deeper, you can lift the upper body, spread the feet wide, see if you can grab the ankles or maybe the outer edges of the feet with the feet flexed, resting the head back down. And remember, it's not as wide as you can go with the feet. You can just hang on to whatever's there in a relaxed way, where you're still feeling a nice opening in the hips. Knees are still feeling okay, meaning they're not talking to you. And if on this side it's not working and it was fine on the other side, make that adjustment. Just let go of the feet or the ankles, hang on to the bottom knee if that was working, or a right foot can come down to the mat and you just keep the legs crossed. And if you have the feet or the ankles, gently release, set the right foot down onto the mat. Legs are still crossed. And then uncross the legs, extend the legs out in front of you, a little wider than hip width distance, so not very narrow. And then reach the arms overhead, find a nice stretch, getting as long as you can. And now we'll clasp opposite elbows the other way. So other forearm on top. You'll take the left foot, you'll bring it over to cross on top of the right. So hooking the feet, and then you can let the legs go. If they feel like they're all squeezing together, see if you can bring some relaxation there. And then lift the upper body and the head up enough so you could just bring the upper body over to the right. So find a place where you can easily be. Both shoulder blades down on the mat. Definitely some length on the whole left side of the body, but make sure you feel it in the right side too. Breathe into that length. Eyes closed or softly open. And let everything else go. Just be here. And you'll start to lift the upper body, bring it back to center, uncross the legs. You're just bringing that left foot back out a little wider than hip width distance. Reach the arms overhead, find that stretch. So you're stretching out through the arms, the legs, moving the rib cage away from the hips. Then you'll start to walk the feet in, bending the legs. Roll over to your right side. Use the hands to bring yourself up to seated. And as you come to seated, we'll slowly make our way forward to hands and knees, tabletop. And once you get to tabletop, let's just open up the spine a little bit, setting up for cat-cow. So stack the shoulders over the wrists, hips over the knees. You hug the belly in a little bit the whole time. So inhale, reach the heart forward, lift the tail. You'll feel that arching of the spine. And on the exhale, you round the spine, pull the belly in, chin in toward the chest, rounding the whole back, even the lower back. Inhale forward. Exhale, round. If you're comfortable with this, close the eyes, stay with your breath. It's your inhale that brings you forward and your exhale that brings you back. And you're trying to breathe as slow as you can. So the movement shouldn't be fast. Last one, forward and back. Take your time with it. And then you'll come back to a neutral spine. Bring the knees and the feet all the way together. Tuck the toes underneath you. And then you'll start to walk the hands back. So if you have a block, it might be nice, especially if the feet are tight. Some of you won't need one at all. But if you have a block, you can bring the block in front of you, and that'll give you a little bit of time to sit all the way back onto the heels, and that block can go up to the tallest height. And if you get here and you feel like, oh, I'm fine, I don't really need the block, then the hands come to the thighs. And we always look down to make sure the fourth and fifth toe are pointing straight forward. So now that you're sitting onto the heels, or maybe you have the hands down in front of you because the feet need, it's too much for the feet, that's fine, you stay there. If you have the hands on the thighs and the chest is lifted and you're in this toe tuck all the way, we can add some wrist opening, which we've been playing with. So from here, you just take the right hand across all four fingers and you start to apply some pressure on the fingers. So it's like you're bending them back, but that wrist should feel like it's opening at the same time. So you want to feel a lot of space in the front side of the wrist as you bring the fingers back. So it's just the four fingers. Thumb is free on that left hand. So fingers and toes are basically doing the same thing. And then release that with the fingers. Take maybe 1-2 fingers on the thumb, or maybe you take all the fingers and you just go real light on the thumb. So same thing, just the thumb. And you're listening to your body. So you want to feel a nice opening in the hand, the wrist. And then same thing, other side. So left hand comes across all four of the fingers on the right hand. You start to bend the fingers back, applying that pressure to where you feel that opening start to happen in the wrist. Being gentle with yourself, listening to what the wrist needs in the forearm. Still with that same Ujjayi breath, sending the breath everywhere you need it. Then moving to that right thumb. So for a lot of us, especially if you're right-handed, that's your texting thumb. So start to apply some pressure there. See, keep that wrist opening still happening at the same time. Take one more deep breath here, in through the nose. Exhale out of the mouth. Bring the hands down in front of you and then untuck the toes, tap the feet on the ground. Yes, that was a longer toe tuck. I should have told you before we came out that you could have come out whenever you wanted. That's for any pose. You don't have to stay as long. You can always take breaks and then come back in. Okay, so knees and feet all the way together, but this time tops of the feet down on the mat. And if the knees are okay with it, sit back onto the heels. So same thing we did before, but it feels a lot better because now the feet want to go this way because we had them tucked the other way. So you can stay right here. You're getting a nice opening on the top of the foot, the ankle, all of that's happening. I'll give you another option if you want to take it a little bit deeper, and we'll come into a deeper ankle stretch if that's available. So hands to the mat, just outside the legs. You're hugging those outer ankles in so the feet aren't going apart. And then maybe you start to lift the knees away from the mat. So it's similar to what we were doing with the hands, but you're going in the opposite direction. And we won't hold this for long. You want to feel a stretch on the top of the foot, ankle. And set the feet back down onto, set the knees back down onto the mat. So we'll take this into Virasana Hero's pose. So come forward to hands and knees. Keep the knees together, but separate the feet wider than hip width distance. So it looks like this. Knees are together, feet are a little wider than hip width distance. So most of us need something to go underneath the hips. I like using a block on the lowest height. You could use a block on the medium height. You could even stack 2 blocks between the feet. Some of you don't have blocks, but you have a pillow or a blanket. That works too. And then some of you can get the hips all the way down between the feet. And if that's the case, you don't even need anything. The hips just need to touch down on something. So put a prop or 2 back. Higher is always better if you're not sure. And then take the hands and manually move the calf muscle out. That gives you more space for the knees so that you can sit back onto the ground, a block, 2 blocks, maybe a pillow, bolster, blanket, whatever you have. So hips are down even underneath you, outer ankles still holding in. You're still opening up the feet and the ankles with this pose. Inner thighs are rolling down toward the mat. And then from here, we'll add a shoulder opening. So reach the arms forward, bring the right arm on top of the left arm. And let's just start by bringing the hands to the shoulders. Elbows come down toward the chest. So it's like you're giving yourself a hug, but you're also trying to pull the shoulder blades apart across the back. Shoulders away from the ears, so the neck has plenty of space, and you're rising up through the crown of the head. So you can stay right here. If you feel like your shoulders are open enough to go deeper, you could keep that hooking of the elbows and bring the back of the forearms together. Some of you can take the left fingertips inside of the right hand. So each option gets a little deeper into the shoulder opening. You stay with the one that feels easy today. And if you are in this shape with the forearms together, you want the hands to be over the elbows. Sometimes they want to come in close to the face. Shoulders away from the ears. Sometimes they want to hike up toward the ears. And that also takes away the shoulder opening. So your body's constantly trying to adjust to make things easier. But once you learn these poses, you start to know, okay, that's taking me out of the pose and I want to stay in it. And last little bit, if you feel like if you're in this shape with the forearms together and you feel like there's more space there, you could lift the hands up. Maybe the gaze goes up, but that's certainly deeper. So skip it if it's too much. And elbows come back in line with the shoulders. We'll all reach the arms forward, palms facing up, switch sides, left arm on top of right, and then just start. Hands on the shoulders, bring the elbows down toward the chest, and keep pulling those shoulder blades apart, tops the shoulders away from the ears. Maybe you stay here or play with bringing the backs of the forearms together, maybe right fingertips inside of the left hand. Just keep that space across the shoulders, hands over the elbows. Spine long, so you're still pressing down into the sit bones to rise up through the crown of the head. And for the last little bit, maybe if the forearms are together, maybe you start to lift the forearms up. Gaze can go up too if that feels natural. And elbows come back in line with the shoulders. If you lifted them, release the arms down by the sides and just feel that space across the shoulders. Maybe you take some shoulder rolls, taking big circles with the shoulders, going slow to see how big of a circle you can take. Letting the shoulders come up toward the ears, way back behind you, down the back, and then come forward again. And you'll switch the direction. So you're going in the same direction, go the other way, which might be a little harder. There's one way sometimes that's easier. If they're even, great. You want to keep doing this so that they stay even. Good. And then start to release that. Come forward to hands and knees. If you have anything underneath the hips, just set it off to the side. You won't need it. And then you'll turn to face the side. So soles of the feet are wider than hip width distance. Legs are bent. Hands back behind you. So you're sitting back. And then you'll bring the knees side to side like windshield wipers. So feet are wide. Knees are going side to side. We are bringing the knees pretty close down to the ground or the mat as you come side to side. Maybe they touch, maybe they don't, but you've done a lot of internal hip rotation and you're doing that on one leg, but you're getting an external hip rotation on the other leg. And eventually we are going to stay in this shape. We just want to warm it up by going side to side. Let's do one more time each side. And next time the knees come over to the right, stay there. Bring the knees all the way over to the right. This left hand comes forward between the legs. And then you start to turn the chest forward. So we want this right knee to be right in front of the hip, left knee outside of the hip. The trick with the feet is the closer the feet are in toward the body, the easier this is. So if you're struggling, bring the feet in. If you feel like, oh, wow, I've got a lot of space here, then you want to have a 90-degree angle with each leg. So the feet would come out a little bit and then both feet flex. So with the fingertips down on the ground, face that right knee with the chest as best you can. Some of you are going to be leaning way over to the right. That's fine. Keep that support there. You're in the pose. Some of you are going to be able to sit upright and it's like you're trying to get that left hip down to the ground, but it probably won't touch. It's fine. Maybe you stay here. If you're comfortable, you could start to walk the hands forward, putting a little bit more weight onto this right hip. So different hip openings, external hip rotation on the right leg, internal hip rotation on the left leg, which is kind of fun to do at the same time. Close the eyes, let the head and the neck go. So we call this one deer pose in yin, like the animal deer, D-E-E-R. And you'll start to walk the hands in toward the body if you leaned forward over that right leg. Bringing the left hand back between the legs, sitting up tall, seeing if you can get that left hip down anymore, rising up through the crown of the head. And then left hand comes back behind you. Both knees come up to center, feet down on the mat. And then we'll take both knees all the way over to the left. Just stay here with that right hand back. Knees are working down toward the ground. They don't have to touch. And then take the right hand forward between the legs. Remember, you can bring the feet in as close as you want to the body. Make this easy, whatever that means for you. Or you can bring the feet out until you get this 90-90 shape, feet flexed if that's the case. And then chest faces toward that left knee. Maybe you're leaning out to the left. That's fine. Don't feel like you have to come all the way upright. Some of you can sit upright and you're rising up through the crown of the head, working to get this right hip down toward the mat. So it might not touch, but just make sure there's a little bit of energy trying to get it down. So stay here with the spine long, or maybe you start to walk the hands forward. So we come forward if we're sitting upright. If you're leaning way over to the side, you've got enough on your plate, just stay there. We're only here for about a minute. So go to a place where you're away from your edge. Close the eyes if you're comfortable with that, or keep them half open. Focus on the sound of your breath and the feeling of it. And if this pose is presenting a struggle, know that it is one of the harder poses for some of us to get into. It is a lot to ask of the hips. So just breathe in it wherever you are. We're not holding this one as long as we've held the others. And start to walk the hands back in if you leaned forward. Right hand comes between the legs, sit up tall, trying to work that right hip down, see if there's any more space there. And then you'll bring the right hand back behind you, bring the knees back to center, and let's just take some windshield wipers, knees side to side, to shake that off before we move on. And then you'll come back to center, bring the feet back together, turn to face forward. So if you have a block, that would be nice for this next pose. You'll just set it down toward the side of the mat. You could also do it with a pillow or a bolster if that's the case, or a blanket. You can bring it off to the side. But if you have a block, use the block or book if you're using that instead of a block. So come down onto your back, soles of the feet to the mat. So we'll play with the supported bridge. We want the hips to be lifted without holding them, which is where the block or some kind of prop comes in handy. So to get into this, press into the feet, lift the hips up, slide whatever you have underneath the hips. If you're using a block, stick with either the lowest height or the medium height for this one. And then once the hips touch down, you let them rest. Soles of the feet are still on the mat. There is a lifting of the chest. So just lift the chest up enough so you can get the shoulder blades underneath you and feel like the outer upper arms are pressing down onto the ground. Back of the head is definitely down, and we keep the chin away from the chest. If the chin comes down toward the chest, then we close the throat, and that affects our breath. And we're always trying to keep smooth, long breaths in all of these shapes and postures. So no matter the elevation of the hips, and even if you don't have anything, hips can be down on the ground, you're still getting something out of this. It sometimes can be surprising how it doesn't feel like you're doing much. And then when you come out of the pose, you feel everything settle and you realize that shape did make a difference. So you might stay right here with the soles of the feet on the mat. I'll give you an option to take a deeper back bend, but only take it if it feels like it isn't too much work. If it is, you just come right back to this. So maybe you extend the right leg out in front of you, the heels resting down on the mat. So you're not keeping the leg lifted. So you're getting a nice stretch on the right side of the body. It's definitely a deeper back bend. You can stay like this or extend the left leg out in front of you. So see if both legs work. If it's too much, skip it, walk the feet back in, or you could do one leg at a time. So keep the right leg out, left foot on the mat, and then switch. I'll tell you when to switch if you're doing the one leg. If you're doing both legs, great. Just keep the chest lifted. Feel that stretch at the top of the pelvis, which can feel really good for a lot of us. Lower back is still long. So tailbone's pointing forward toward the feet, not down toward the ground. And that's how you keep the lower back without giving it all the space it needs. If you're doing one leg, switch legs. And we'll all start to walk the feet back in so that both soles of the feet are on the mat, back in the supported bridge that we started with. And then maybe you lift the right leg up this time. So foot over the hip or somewhere near there. And you can just do one leg at a time, or maybe if you feel stable with whatever's underneath you, you lift up the other leg. So both legs up. So once the legs are up, you can let the legs be relaxed. You don't need to use any of the muscles in the legs. You're already here. Just keep the chest lifted, a little bit of toning of the belly. So it's not totally relaxed. There's definitely an arching of the lower back. And then if you want to get into the feet and the ankles, you can point and flex the feet. Go slow. You don't want to wake yourself up too much. We want to reverse the blood flow in the legs. If you have glaucoma, this is a lot of pressure for the eyes. So you would skip the legs going up and just keep the feet down, and even bring the hips down if it feels like it's too much. And after you're done pointing and flexing the feet, you could take some ankle rolls, moving the feet around in circles, going in the same direction to start. I'll tell you when to switch, but just exploring that range of motion in the feet and the ankles. And then switch, go the other way with your circles. Maybe building a little bit of heat in the legs. I'm certainly feeling it in the calves, IT band area. Feet are starting to build a little heat. Ankles are feeling really good. And bring the feet back to stillness. Spread the toes as wide as you can. See if you can make space between each toe. And release the toes, the feet. Let them go back to the way they were. Sometimes they don't go back. It takes a while. All right, bend the knees, set the feet down onto the mat, back to the supported bridge shape. The hips are lifted. And now you're feeling the blood flow go back into the feet the way it usually does. You'll press into the feet, lift the hips up enough so you can slide whatever you have underneath the hips off to the side. And then same shape we started with. So bring the feet out wide, wider than hip width, knees together in the center. So this is always a nice way to release any back bend and any pressure in the lower back. And you'll start to heel toe the feet back to center, hip width distance apart. Cross the right leg high up over the left leg, just like we did before. Scoot the hips over to the right, and both knees come over to the left. So right leg is crossed on top of the left. If it's too much for the lower back, right arm's reaching out to the side. If it's too much for the lower back, just uncross the knees and you can stack them. That's a good alternative for your twist. But if it feels okay to have the legs crossed, then try that. Maybe the nose starts to point over to the right gently. Eyes can be closed. You'll start to roll the head back to center, uncross the legs, walk the feet back to the mat, finding center on your back. And this time, let's bring the knees in toward the body. Hang on to each knee with each hand, and you'll just move the knees around in circles. So this is a nice way to counterpose a twist, especially the longer the hold is, the more you need a counter. And then go the other way with the circles of the knees. So you're just moving the hips around on the mat, lower back, and set the feet back down onto the mat. Cross the left thigh high up over the right thigh. We scoot the hips over to the left a little bit so we can stack them easier as we bring the knees over to the right. And this side might be different. So, you can always uncross the knees if it's too much and just stack them. Left arm reaches back behind you. Maybe the gaze goes with it, but just keep the eyes closed or softly open. Try not to move the eyes around, whether or not they're open or closed. Can you just keep the eyes still? So eyes are part of our brain. So it's connected, and the movement of the eyes also affects the movement of the brain. So as you soften the eyes, maybe you think about softening the brain. And start to bring the head back to center if it's all the way over to the side. Uncross the legs. Bring the feet back to the mat, finding center on your back. Knees come in toward the chest. Hang on to the knees. Same counter pose as before. Find those circles. Maybe you start in the opposite direction. So the other way. Keeping the knees and the feet together, finding those circles, feeling the hips circle around on the mat. And go the other way with your circles. Then bring the knees in toward the chest. You can keep the head down on the mat, close the eyes, take a deep breath in through the nose. Exhale out of the mouth, Shavasana. Extend the legs out in front of you, arms down by the sides. If you want to use any props, grab them, set yourself up, take a different version of your Shavasana. But if you don't have anything, you don't need anything, you can just lie down flat in stillness. If you do have something to cover your eyes, that's always nice, especially if you're doing this during the day and have a lot of light where you are. It helps you drop into the pose a little easier. So Shavasana, also known as corpse pose, coming into a complete peaceful stillness. You don't have to do anything. Let go of the breath control. Just experience the moment. You'll start to bring your attention and awareness back to the breath and start to find some small movements in the hands and the feet. Stretch the arms overhead, getting long again, maybe even yawning to wake yourself up again. Walk the feet in, bending the legs, rolling on over to your right side, cradling the head and the arm. Eyes still closed. So we take our time coming out of Shavasana. We don't want to just leap out of it. Left hand presses down into the floor in front of you, and you start to come up to an easy cross-legged seat. Sitting up tall. And this part is important. You can find your meditation seat a lot easier after you've explored all those shapes. So feel how nice this is. Notice what's changed and shifted within the body, physically and emotionally. And hopefully you're feeling better than when you started and more like yourself, more centered. Bring the hands together in front of you. Slight bow the head to take a moment, honor and acknowledge your heart and spirit. as well as everyone around you, people you know and don't know, pets too. Bring the head back up, blink open the eyes. Namaste. Thank you. I think I got so relaxed, I might have mumbled namaste at the end there. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you next time.